Good afternoon. This is Grant Swartzwelder with the Oilfield Strong. Welcome to another episode. Going to have a fantastic talk about shale gas, shale oil, the development. I've got a fantastic guest to discuss all of that. This all came about because of a conversation that we recorded a couple of months ago with Ryan Dumont with Wood Mackenzie, talking about a very bullish attitude he has on shale gas, and especially for Haynesville and South Texas. But it really started thinking about all the different shale plays and where they are in the development. We're calling this episode, Are We in the Fairway Still? And that golf analogy, it really applies here because so many companies are talking about that they've already drilled most of their fairway. Now they're going out further, or they're having to really worry about the economics of these plays. So to discuss all of this with us, I'm very happy to have Rob Quigley, Managing Director of VSO Petroleum Consultants, head of their Dallas office. He is, they've done on average of a couple $2 billion a year in evaluation. Yep. So all throughout the nation. So he's a perfect one to talk about this. He's also one that we've been able to talk, and he introduced me to a concept called the battered Aggie syndrome. Now I've heard that within politics in another regard, but as we're both Aggies, right now we are number 7, 9 in
6,
the
I think.
6 even.
Yep.
So unfortunately, we look at that as an opportunity to only have disappointment at some point.
Yeah.
So we shall see. And but we're going to live the high life and talk noise as much as we can right in this moment while we can, and before reality sets in.
I just really wish I could enjoy when we're top 10 every year. I really wish I could enjoy it.
That 1 week, and you better talk quick and get all your licks in and be able to dart right on out.
Yep.
Very good. Well, we'll should have had our maroon on.
That's right.
Bad on us. So tell us, obviously the shale development, shale production has been ruling the roost in the oil industry. A variety of shale plays, all with different challenges, status. Give me a rough idea of the overall market for shale and kind of what's happening. There's probably some general themes that would fit with that. And then what we're going to do is, and this isn't really more a macro discussion, it's more of kind of specifics of the assets and the commercialization and kind of that type of a topic. But then we'll talk about from Permian to some of these other specifics, what we're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. What we do, we're kind of buy side underwriting focused. And so we're not doing like the macro roll up of how many thousands of locations are left in, name your basin. But what we are doing is we're actively in deals where, people are transacting on these things. And so we have to form opinions on what's becoming increasingly more and more tier 2, tier 3, depleted intervals, drilled up intervals, and people trying to be creative with what's left on their assets. And so we get to see a lot of the themes of how people are trying to kick the can down the road, create more runway, more inventory, more capital activities for their companies to do. So we get to see, how people are being creative to exploit their inventory and even kind of create new, quote unquote, new inventory.
And you're looking at this from a perspective as a buy side consultant, if you will, but it really has ramifications for the overall industry and kind of how to look at those shale, because a lot of folks have said they are pushing out to less productive, more economically challenged areas of those shale plays.
Yeah, and what you're seeing is some of the transactions, some of the asset sales we're in are those majors selling off their non-core assets, right? Like that's a theme over the last couple of years, is divesting stuff that is, on the back half of their inventory stack. And a lot of times—
And is that shale based or non-conventional, or is because at one point it seemed like they were getting rid of all of their conventional? Maybe they've already done that.
We saw that. Yeah,
that's already gone.
Mostly.
So this is now the transaction where they're shedding that is the non-conventional lower end.
Yeah, you still see some conventional divestments.
Sure.
But yeah, it's kind of the tier 2, 3 shale, parts of their shale asset that they've built, and they can afford to monetize that. And so we're being brought in to help look at that stuff, and it's challenging. Yeah.
So some of the factors that you look at in each of these shales, I would think takeaway. Obviously, West Texas has a lot of issue with that for gas. I assume some of these other markets would have that same issue. Kind of where the different benches, how far that fairway goes out to. Are you in the rough? How thick is that rough? See what I did with that golf analogies? I'm just going to beat the hell out of it over and over again. Are there any general themes that you're seeing on that type of valuation or that type of development?
Yeah, I mean, it really changes from basin to basin, but I'd say the general themes is that people are forced to characterize, tier 2 and tier 3, and that might be pushing the edges of the basin, and that is where you actually have to bring your geologist in to help define the edge of the basin. Whereas, for better or worse, the geologists were largely kicked to the side for the beginning of not the beginning, but kind of the middle of this shale revolution, because we were drilling in the core of the core, and these were largely, ubiquitous sands that are, tight sands that didn't really change much. Now we're looking at assets that do require characterization, to make sure you don't stub your toe and you draw a stick where there's not actually any stick to be drawn in reality. And
the shame about that fantastic answer is I got stuck on the point about kicking the geologist to the curb, because the first well I ever drilled as a young engineer was one that geology said, and the geologist said you had to do. So we drilled a 10,000 foot well that produced about 7 barrels a day, and they thought it was a huge success. And so kicking a geologist to the curb seems like the very appropriate thing. But that's a personal story, a personal issue that I have.
They were successful, right? They found
they
did find oil.
And geologists are not restricted by the whole idea of economics and in their definition of success.
Yeah, it wasn't a dry hole, so it was a win.
Good point. Well, now it sounds like you're showing geology love. So, all right, well, then let's go to specific basins, because I think we can talk about a more unique issues for each of them.
Yeah.
The big boy, Permian. What you got there?
Yeah. So the theme is upside benches and the edges of the play. So first on upside benches, you're seeing, like in the Midland Basin, like the Middle Sprayberry, Upper Sprayberry being developed, some of the deeper targets as well that people are expanding out to. They've always known that the oil is there, but they were usually focused on, the primary targets, Wolfcamp A, Wolfcamp B, Lower Sprayberry. So you're starting to see over the last couple of years a big delineation of where the Middle and Upper Sprayberry are productive. You also saw a little bit of a trend in the Joe Mill on the north side of the basin, like north side of Howard County, and a little bit of a play there. But the point is, operators are moving to not the Wolfcamp A, B, Lower Sprayberry, and delineating those things. So that's one trend in the Midland Basin, and kind of the same theme in the Delaware Basin as well. There are the upside benches that they've always known are there, and they're finally going out and testing them. And so, they're not, those upside zones are upside for a reason. They're not usually as ubiquitous, and they're not usually as good as your Wolfcamp A's would be. And so the economics are usually thinner, but they're making money in a lot of these benches.
And each of these zones that they're looking at, are they having to drill a new well for that? They can't just recomplete the existing well?
Yeah, that's right.
So that challenges the economics further, because you got the cost of drilling and landing and
that's right.
Okay.
Yep. And so then there's the drilling the fringes. So in the main benches, they're also going out to the fringe of the basin. So I'm thinking of, in the northeast side of the Midland Basin, they've really been pushing the Wolfcamp A at further east than anyone has gone before. And you're starting to come up on the shelf as you come east in the basin, and you have more carbonates coming in. And so it's more of a gradational exercise of, there is no obvious geological no-go line. What you're seeing is on the fringes of a lot of these basins it's a gradational answer, right? The wells just gradationally degrade as you go out of the basin. And so what's the stopping point? You have to map it. And ultimately it's driven by what is oil price. If oil price jumps by $10, $20, you can all of a sudden push further out on the fringes of those plays.
And typically, especially in the Permian, but probably every zone or every basin, you see that it's the independent, it's the smaller guy that's willing to test those things out. But now you have all this consolidation. So who's going to be testing all these out into the beyond the fairway and up the toward the basin?
Yeah. I mean, in spite of the consolidation, believe it or not, there are still a number of independents active out there, and those they're going to be the ones to do that. And a lot of times, if the majors, if the large public E&Ps had assets out there on the fringes, they've probably already divested them, or they're actively divesting them now, and that will fall to the hands of the more adventurous types who can take that risk and try to make it work.
Okay. Obviously, Midland Basin's been around longer, steady Eddie. Everyone's moving toward Delaware, or that's where a lot of growth has been. Seems like that's where a lot of the drilling is now. Correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm sure you will. But let's talk about the Delaware and then maybe specifically issues in New Mexico. Thank God they have such good rock, because otherwise the operating requirements would make it a terrible place to operate, it seems like.
Yeah, it's a good news, bad news situation, because it is kind of the best
so good rock. You're willing to deal with all the regulatory and other operational challenges.
Right. Well, in our view, it is, in that kind of northern central Lee Eddy County, sure, that is where most of the actual realistic stacked pay is. I mean, we've looked at processes up there where you literally have from the top of the first bone to the Wolfcamp A, every single sand and carb bench is a prospective target, and people have actually targeted it up there. So the rock is really phenomenal across a lot of New Mexico, and yeah, it offsets all the regulatory challenges that they're having.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that seems to be affecting New Mexico, but maybe it's affecting other areas, is water. You've got seismicity issues, you've got water takeaway, and for that matter, gas takeaway. Is that going to limit the development of that area, or slow it down, or what's that going to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't exactly know the answer to that.
Come on now, I just said you were an expert.
Well, so I'm an expert in some things.
Some things, all right. No, that is hard, because it's a lot of moving pieces. I'm kidding you.
Yeah, no, but there are areas of seismicity where the Railroad Commission's kind of cordoning off, and you can no longer dispose there. So, but my understanding is we're not really seeing any kind of disposal limitations, as far as I've heard. Now, I could be wrong.
Well, I think in New Mexico, what they've done is they limit the disposal wells that can be drilled there. And so a lot of that water is being pushed over into Texas,
Gotcha. Which
I don't get it. Let New Mexico keep their water, but somehow they've been able to do that.
Sure. So then it's just it raises the cost, right? If you have to truck it that far.
I think it definitely does that.
Yeah. Raises the kind of break-even cost of your wells.
I know this isn't a shale, but I keep hearing the word San Andres, which I always thought was just this sleepy little zone that independents would drill, but it seems like there's a big play going.
Yeah, it's a San Andres, not the San Andreas, as some people call it.
Well, even though we have seismicity, so it could all kind of link together somehow. But
yeah, we've seen a couple of deals recently in the San Andres, and we've looked at that play since it started, and it is very complicated, and I think the runway is
complicated. How, like fractures or pressure or what?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of theories. I mean, we kind of saw from the start, as that play was developed, there was all kinds of theories about drive mechanisms, and where you had some thesis of wells being drilled in the ROS, residual oil zone, and so you would have, I mean, they would take 60 to 90 days to dewater to just cut your first oil, and we were always so amazed with like the Monsanto guys who drilled some of the first wells ever. I mean, they literally waited 2 to 3 months to see the first barrel of oil come out of the
That
well.
would be patience.
It's
Is that because maybe they were involved up in the San Juan area where you have to dewater zones up there?
Maybe they're used to it.
And they had some. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
I mean, they knew the oil was there and they had invested in it, so they obviously, the patience paid off. So we've seen some deals out there. We think the runway is fairly limited, but people are making wells.
So is that the case, that dewatering issue with all of the San Andreas play that I'm hearing about in West Texas, or is it just certain areas?
The areas I've looked at it's not necessarily an issue. You just have to. It's a known quantity at this point. So yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
The other upside bench that we're seeing, of course, is like the deep targets. So the Woodford Barnett in the Permian. And so that's kind of the hot new topic that a lot of operators are chasing out there. They're deeper. It kind of spans the Central Basin platform. So it doesn't really fit into the Midland, Delaware typical nomenclature that people, divide the Permian into. But we think that that's real and that's going to be more delineated and developed over time. So again, that goes into that upside bench narrative.
So even though you like geologists, I know you're not a geologist, but the Woodford Barnett is in the Central Basin. It's not in the Midland Basin, not in the Delaware.
It's a little bit in all of them.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the northern side or throughout the whole?
Kind of the north central side of the Permian. That's
okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so is there a true development programs going for that, or is it more exploratory still and trying to figure it out? Where's that stand?
Both. Yeah, both. There's some companies that are solely focused on it, and then some of the large independents out there are, occasionally drilling a DSU full of Woodford wells, and so they're delineating it. But those guys have they're allocating capital all across the board, so they're trying to delineate while still sticking to kind of their tier 1 assets at the same time. So we'll see over the next couple of years that play kind of be more developed, and it's just another bench where you have it. It's another bench to add to your inventory.
Okay, let's move on. Bakken.
Yeah.
What do you got for me there?
Yeah, so you've seen some expansion from the core. So, I mean, the Bakken is one of the most drilled up basins, in the core.
Sure seems like it.
And so you're seeing people move away from the core. We kind of saw a renaissance of with better landing and better completion techniques, expanding your ability out into kind of the southern and western parts of the Bakken, out there even into Montana, people making good wells. So the theme there is pushing the limits from the core. And then in the core, where there has already been development, the theme there is refracs, which has been a theme for a while.
Sure.
And then redevelopment wells too. And that's, I talked about it on our last podcast when I was here, but there's a section that's fully drilled up already with existing Bakken and Three Forks wells. And they're coming and simply, drilling 5 more brand new wells in the middle of all those wells and putting a big boy frac on them. And though it's not happening everywhere, but where it's happening, they're trying to prove up the thesis of, hey, I can come into a DSU that was historically understimulated because they pumped these fracs in 2013, 14, and they just didn't rubbleize. They didn't, stimulate all the rock. And so I can come in there and stimulate the rock that was missed round 1 and make good wells. And so there's folks that are seeing that, doing that, and figuring out, okay, how much running room does that add to my asset? So, and what they're having to decide right now is, do I refrac or redevelop? Because if you think about it, it's the same answer, right? With a refrac, you're pumping a big modern stimulation to access stimulated rock volume that you didn't get before. So you're either going to do that with re-entering an old well or drilling a brand new well. And they're having to make the decision. And some operators are going one way and some operators are going another. Some operators are testing both at the same time. So that's kind of an emerging trend to, kick the can down the road and give more economical opportunities. Because ultimately, you look from a recovery perspective, a lot of those old sections have a lot of oil that should theoretically be able to be extracted even after already being developed. Sure. And so they're trying to make that happen.
And I think the word refrac is going to be used a few more times. Is my prediction. Yeah. Are you seeing that just simply being larger, higher rate just kind of bulling the rock, or are we using different technologies? What does refrac really mean, and does it mean something different in each, or a refrac in one area is kind of a refrac in another area?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same
thematically.
Yeah, it's the same basic concept. You're re-entering an old wellbore, and you're probably, you have more your stage spacing is smaller, right? So you're pumping more stages, different cluster designs. Overall, just more proppant and fluid going down hole. We're capable of that now, whereas we just didn't achieve those heights back in the beginning of the shale plays. And so you're essentially applying what modern technology to kind of an old wellbore, essentially.
Okay. I alluded to Ryan's presentation on shale gas, and he really focused heavy on the Eagle Ford, South Texas, and Haynesville. Sees those as the areas that can really grow the gas production that will be required in his eyes and Wood Mackenzie's eyes in the years to come. Do you see that the same, that those are two great areas that can really increase gas volumes?
Yeah. I don't know about predictions about macro increases in gas volumes, but yeah, we think there's economic opportunities out there. So in the Haynesville, for instance, the hot topic right now is the Western Haynesville play. So that's kind of Leon, Robertson County in East Texas, where Comstock, Aethon, Mitsui are kind of leading the charge. I think Hillcorp was out there as well, but drilling monster wells coming on at 20 to 30 million a day and staying flat there for 12 plus months. And, the best well in the play has already cumed 3 BCF per thousand in 3 years.
So it only takes 1 or 2 wells to completely throw the gas curve off balance and keep prices low.
Yeah. Is
that what you're telling me?
I mean, that's the theme, in my opinion, across the nation, is we have a lot of really good gas. Now, the question is, in that Western Haynesville play, there's a lot of work left to do. Like, we think they're largely trading dollars right now, trying to get drilling costs down because it is so deep and hot. And so the wells are literally costing $30 million per well. So you're drilling, so massive wells.
Better generate that much gas.
Yeah. You're drilling massively productive wells, and they're working towards making it work. And Comstock has clearly demonstrated that they're committed to it. So, we think that there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot of midstreamers that, the whole Wood Mac thesis on Texas, Louisiana, gas, LNG, that makes a lot of sense to me. And we're seeing a lot of dollars move towards exploiting kind of the gas that's there. So the Western Haynesville's a big topic. And even just in the legacy, quote unquote, Haynesville, North Louisiana, East Texas, we've seen there's, a lot of work left to be done. I mean, there's parts that are drilled up, but there's still the mid-Bossier in a lot of places. So there's always been 2 benches to exploit, the Haynesville and then the mid-Bossier. And the mid-Bossier has been pretty well developed, but there's a lot of running room there. We've seen a lot of transactions, particularly in East Texas, where it's less developed than North Louisiana. And you're seeing a lot of that, a lot of capital attracted to those assets. So bottom line is we just see more running room generally out there in the Haynesville. Western Haynesville has a lot of running room, and the Haynesville has some to contribute to that
running
gas
room.
thesis.
There's just a lot of acreage that can be drilled, not refracs, any of that stuff. It's actual new drill.
Yeah. Now there's a lot that's already fully developed and won't come back to, but there is enough that people have work to do out there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I keep pondering, it's like how much LNG and how many dadgum data centers are going to be needed to use up all that gas. And obviously the expectation is that both are going to grow. But when everyone says they're going to grow, that always makes me very nervous. But that's probably a different podcast.
Right.
South Texas, Eagle Ford.
Yeah. So along the gas thesis, there's a swath of the Eagle Ford that has not yet been fully exploited in the gas window. Largely, the oil window has been largely drilled. So I think from a Fairway perspective, you can do some work in the gas window. If you go down to like Webb County, Dimmitt County, there over the last couple of years, there is an exciting revelation of the Austin Chalk down in that area, and that was we had a presentation once. We called it not your mother's Austin, or not your father's Austin Chalk. When people hear Austin Chalk, they think of
there's some negativity.
There's a lot of connotations there,
yes.
But a lot of that is kind of natural fracture driven production that a lot of people made money and a lot of people stubbed their toes in.
That's being generous.
Yeah. This Webb County Austin Chalk appears to be more matrix porosity driven and mappable and repeatable. And so it's
the same zone. It just has a different, because I think the original Austin Chalk was more fractured and you could really get a lot and then lose a lot.
That's right. Yeah. So it's the same Austin Chalk. It's just down there's less natural fractures and it's more porosity development there. So you actually have like matrix driven production there. So over the last couple of years, operators delineated that and we were involved in mapping that out. And so it's not as big as people once thought it was going to be, because once you map it out, again, on our geologist theme, you actually map out the sands, you can actually see where you're going to make good and bad wells.
By definition, I will discount that comment because you use the word geologist in there. So one of the other things that I think about when I think of Eagle Ford, Haynesville, but maybe some of these, and I'm kind of digressing here, is consolidation. It seems like there's Eagle Ford, you're seeing big deals, Crescent, Magnolia, others really trying to gobble things up. And maybe that's a maturity of the zone, of the Shale Basin. Are you seeing, I assume that's kind of happening in all of these. You see it in the Barnett, which we'll talk about in a second. But I wonder what effect, I'm kind of thinking this through, is what effect that could have in the development in reaching out to these other zones. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's always the question on when you have consolidation, how does that affect how a basin is exploited? And usually 1 + 1 doesn't exactly equal 2 when you consolidate.
It's a lot closer to 2 or maybe even lower than that for some reason. So it's so that'll be interesting to see, and obviously price. So anyway, I'm sitting here pondering instead of paying attention to you. So I'll try to refocus here, Rob.
Yeah, it might slow down the pace of development a little bit or something like that. But the other trend in the Eagle Ford, and we saw a lot of processes over the last couple of years where people trying to exploit the new theme of, again, coming back to refracs. That's kind of been a hot topic over the last couple of years. People have been successful at doing those refracs. And so you're trying to extrapolate and create run room. So it's the same, in my mind, the kind of story in the Bakken and the Eagle Ford are really similar. You can either redevelop, drill new wells in a previously drilled section and again, or refrac them. And so we're kind of seeing both of those themes happening in the Eagle Ford too. And again, it's trying to create more economic opportunities. It's trying to access more of those recoverable reserves that are out there. And so we'll continue to see that happening. Now, the caveat is in both basin, and this is my kind of buy side hat coming on, like it's not good. It's not going to happen everywhere in every section, right? Like you have to be intentional about where it works, what part of the basin it works, and then your candidates. So without getting into those nuances, and we can if you want, but without getting into those nuances, it's a real trend that will continue, but it's probably not as ubiquitous as some people hope that it is.
Well, to not get in those weeds, but I think I assume what you're talking about is that certain areas, because of either pressure or porosity or reservoir features, would be a better candidate for that.
It's exactly right. And then just the well selection itself. So is it old enough? Is it a small enough historical frac to choose to redevelop that section? And then just the mechanical integrity of that wellbore. I mean, it's been in the ground for 10 plus years, and you never know what you're going to get into when you try to re-enter a 10-year-old well.
10-year-old well, and then push down a whole bunch of sand at a high rate. That's asking for some challenge there. So
it is a challenge for sure.
So now we talked about New Mexico and the challenges of regulatory. I think we might have one that's even more challenging than that. The Marcellus, Utica up there seems like a lot of potential, but they won't let anybody drill.
Yeah.
What do we do with that thing?
Yeah, I mean that's been the eternal issue. It's arguably the best gas play in America, and your rate,
right next to the market too.
you're rate limited coming out of there.
Yep.
So that's the eternal theme. If you could build some pipelines over the Appalachian Mountains to get into the Eastern Seaboard,
Yep.
you have a massive market. And folks in the basin are working on that. I mean, again, to come back to your data center theme, there's some talks and some action on in-basin kind of data center type work. And so there's some folks that are trying to give more of a, off ramp for all that gas coming out of that play. And otherwise it just depends on a big political shift to allow, regulatory cutting all that red tape. And that's way above my pay grade.
Yeah, and likelihood of some of those states taking a hard left into a more open market might be a little limited there.
That's right. But from a running room perspective, I mean, there's, we're starting to see, the Marcellus Utica start to get developed more, but there's a lot more, open acreage left to be drilled. And so those guys that's a massively consolidated basin as well. So they're just sitting on, decades of inventory that they'll be able to drill out for a long time. I mean, the latest kind of hot trend out there is the up dip oily Utica. I'm not sure if you followed that, but there's
not at all.
Yeah, but there's EOG was kind of making headlines of drilling some basically oil wells in the most up dip portion of the Utica in Ohio. And so that was a trend over the last couple of years is some very high liquids yield wells that they're drilling up there. And so the point is you're not so dependent on what gas price is
Sure.
to make those wells. And so that's
you can actually take that out in things called trucks if they even allow that though.
that's right. Yeah.
So it's last basin or maybe basins, Barnett and Fayetteville or Shales obviously seemed kind of tired, old, seems like consolidation going on.
Mm-hmm.
Do I get here the word refrac again?
Yeah. I mean,
we go.
When I think Barnett, I think refrac and BKV's on a tear, refracking all across the Barnett.
Successfully, it sounds like.
I think so. Yeah.
Any sense as to like what percent increase or anything like that, or what the dynamics are? Or
not specifically.
Okay, fair enough. And Fayetteville,
yeah,
just a slow little production area, and that's it, or are you going to throw the refrac on that also?
I don't think we're at the gas prices to make it work in the Fayetteville, but we saw. I mean,
but you're at the gas prices for the Barnett.
That they seem to be, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That I don't follow it, but I just
with how active they are.
Yeah.
I would assume that we're at the right gas price.
Huh. Yeah. That's fascinating. I would have assumed it's the same, but yeah, if one has activity, I guess the economic drivers would be there.
Yeah. But we saw, Flywheel come into the Fayetteville and take a big chunk of that. So there's a lot of those gas assets that are trading hands with so many folks really interested in supply gas. We're seeing some of those basins, like for instance, the Piceance, right? We saw Quantum come in to the Piceance as well, and then Flywheel as well come into the Piceance. So a lot of those kind of sleepy gas basins are being, changing hands with people wanting to get their hands on the physical molecules with the anticipation of everything that our WoodMac friend kind of anticipated that's happening. So,
well, I assume they're also going to have to alter how they actually operate that a lot cheaper, fewer folks, and make a more of a, because it's such a mature field that you've got to treat it as such.
Yeah. I mean, they're always looking for optimization when it changes hands.
So to go back to the fairway golf analysis, you got the rough, you're on the green. It seems like the green or the more positive would be the concept of refrac. Where else would you put some of these themes as to whether who would be in the rough and who would maybe be on the green putting for a two?
Yeah, I don't really want to put anyone anywhere specifically. But
well, the basins, not the individual companies. Even though that would be fun. Let's call out some specifics and get them all riled up.
Exactly.
But maybe just the shale plays or the basins or the technologies. It's it seems like rough. I'll throw this out. The Marcellus, some of the southeast New Mexico, just because of the regulatory and those issues. Some of the takeaway issues in West Texas that might get resolved. In my mind, that's kind of a rough type deal. Mm-hmm. The refrac seems like you're throwing that enough around that it seems like that's a positive that could really help some of these. And then the Western Haynesville seemed to be a really potential growth area compared to some of these other shales.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you said the Marcellus Utica's in the rough, but when you look at the returns on the wells, they're making money.
And I'm saying from a regulatory and just the takeaway and the politics of it all.
Yeah, totally get it.
It seems like from a rock standpoint, it's in a green, but if you can't get out of the rough to ever get to the green, you're still going to get the 7 or 8 or the snowman. So
Marcellus Utica is going to slowly grow because of takeaway capacity. I think a lot of the other basins, though, you have a lot of work left to do. I think the publics are always under pressure to give the market, this is our runway, this is how much we have left to do. But when we're seeing in the weeds on transaction to transaction, I can't think of one recently where I haven't seen something left to do on the asset. And so I think our industry is innovative enough and creative enough to figure out capital projects to work. Or if it becomes a basin that's out of the money, then those will find the right hands that are happy with low decline, declining out an asset. So I think that each basin is finding a way to kick the can down the road. Now I don't have how many years of rig life of drilling life is left on each basin, but it's not next year, and it's not, in my opinion, in the next 5 years or something like that. So
the oil industry has been counted out for many years, and they keep finding new technology and new plays. So I got to believe that story will be retold.
Well, and then we keep seeing a theme of a growing theme, and I've always liked this theme of going back to our conventional roots. And I think the folks that are, as you run into shale exhaustion, as you run into, I just cannot buy my way into, I can't justify getting into this shale asset because I keep getting priced out. The question is, can we find economic activities in all the conventional, reservoirs that are all throughout the United States?
And you're talking about conventional drilling, not necessarily for shale plays, the Woodford, those type things. It's
Correct.
Just going back to basic oil and gas and drilling verticals in the zones that allow that.
That's right. I think we'll see a growing trend over the next decade of a lot of folks shifting back to that and finding new way. Talk about counting people out. A lot of the conventional assets have been counted out, but I guarantee you there's a lot of ways in a lot, now not every field, but there's a lot of ways to find economic activities to make money in those fields.
Now, what jumps out at me on that is West Texas, the Permian, just because there's so many zones. Where else could that really, could conventional drilling really take off?
Yeah, you named the basin.
Really all of them. This theme could be in all of these basins.
Yeah, I think there's got to be pockets everywhere to make things work. East Texas, Gulf Coast. You can go to Mississippi, find economic activities to do.
Seen a lot of activity in Oklahoma. Again, a lot of partly because it's cheaper. You can actually buy stuff up there.
Yeah.
But I assume there's conventional opportunities there.
Yeah.
So it's very good. Rob Quigley with VSO Petroleum Consultants. Really appreciate you coming on. Very informative. Clearly, there's a reason why y'all do billions of transactions or consult on those each year. Great knowledge. Really appreciate you all coming and listening to us. If you like what you've just heard, if you want to know when the next episode is, please follow Oilfield Strong. Please forward this to your friends so that there's a few other folks listening to it. I think they'll be educated and hopefully entertained. But thank you for joining us.